Hmm, nope. All right, so I was trying to do the video, and apparently I'm still having a hard time. Now, maybe I got it.
So I
Nope.
see a live county in the corner.
Yeah, so I'm not even going to worry about the video. Um, Welcome, everybody. This is Helping the Brave. My name is Amy T. Meyer, and I am an Army and Navy veteran. And I am pleased today to introduce um, another veteran, Bryan, and he's going to share with us his transition story and some other things that he's working on. So, Bryan, why don't we start and you take it away?
Yeah, Amy, thanks for that kind introduction. It's Bryan Lett, a Marine Corps veteran. I served from 2007 to 2015. I was actually medically retired, excuse me, in 2015. I had deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. Had a little bit of a hand-to-hand situation when we were clearing some houses and ended up rupturing some disc in my neck. And we can get into more of those details later. But since then, I was lucky enough and transitioned into DAV, or Disabled American Veterans, one of the largest and oldest VSOs, or Veteran Service Organizations in the country. Feel very lucky to be there and give back to the veteran community, much like Helping the Brave. And the idea behind this podcast and everything that so many veterans do on a daily basis is to give back to that community. So to be able to kind of seamlessly kind of transition into that, I was very fortunate. I was very lucky. Not every veteran has a smooth transition, and at least professionally, mine was smooth. Personally, it was a little bumpy, but we can get into that later, Amy. But I appreciate the time and the ability to be here, and hopefully help some veterans.
Very good. Um, you said you felt that it was very seamless from the Marine Corps to the DAV. What made that seamless?
Oh, I mean, it's a real big thing that I think any veteran could benefit from in the transition is networking. There's a fellow Marine friend of mine, Todd Hunter, who had worked at DAV. He was in the DC office. I'm actually in Kentucky. We have two different headquarters. But he had been there. I'd actually met a woman who is now my wife and mother of our two beautiful kids, and she wanted to go see DC. That it was that simple. She'd always wanted to go see the nation's capital. She'd never been there. I was stationed at the Pentagon my first 3 years in the Marine Corps from 2007 to 2010. Is actually how I met Mohawk. Um, and so I contacted him just to say, hey, I just got medically retired. I met this beautiful girl. She wants to go down and see DC and see what it's all about. And he actually invited us over to his house, had some dinner, and turned out that DAV was looking for a communications guy in Cold Spring, Kentucky. And, I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I was in Columbus after my medical retirement, and it just worked out. So I moved a little further south, lucked out with the networking aspect. Um, so my transition from a professional standpoint, like I said, I was very lucky. Landed kind of soft landing. Personally, is where I had some struggles with nightmares and PTSD and different things, and that kind of compounded a little bit on myself when I first met my wife too. She didn't know me as the active duty Marine. She knew me as the recent retiree. She took it all in stride, and each day gets a little easier.
Very good. What has been, if you could create a service to help people transitioning, um, is there something that you would do to help going through what you've gone through that you might have liked
Well,
to
I
have
mean,
seen?
yeah, I mean, DAV, for example, we have transition service officers. They're usually on active duty installations. They're there to be liaisons. Most people that have gotten out, and I got out in 2015, so maybe it's changed a little bit, but TAPS class and all that, DAV could be involved in those. But in my opinion, this is a little bit off the cuff, is there's a great deal of conversation about transitioning vets and what that's like. And I'm glad that that's taking place. It's critically important. But the one thing I don't know gets talked about enough is how each transition is very different. Um, a retiree that served 30 years probably has better networking, probably has bigger network he can tap into, or she has more experience. So I think that transition is a lot different than your 18-year-old that enlisted and is separating at 22 years old, where yes, they've had the positive influence, I'm hoping, of their military career to position them better. But I think their transition probably looks a lot different as opposed to somebody that has had a lot more life experience, if you will, as far as learning how this goes. And a lot of times you learn through experience, and sometimes you learn through secondhand experience. as General Mattis likes to say, and he reads all those books, we can learn through somebody else's experience that might have been rough, and then utilize that to make their transition or experience in other arenas smoother. So, if you're in 30 years, you've seen a lot, you've learned a lot, you might know what pitfalls to avoid. But if you're transitioning at 18 or at 22 after joining at 18, that transition could be very different. You might be more vulnerable to certain relapses, if you will, or bad habits, depending on your background. So I guess I would like to see a more hands-on approach to that active duty member or reservist when they're on their way out, to have somebody, a transition service officer, whatever it may be, that identifies or learns about that individual. Because knowing that individual's background and story, I think could position them much better or in a more favorable position when it comes to transition. It's a term that covers everybody, but the individual experience is very different, and the challenges can be very different. So it's a long-winded answer, and it's a tough question. Um, but I think it's so individual, and it gets grouped sometimes, I think, in a very easily it gets grouped into just a transition as a transition, and it's just not that way.
Okay, um, so you so your thought is that it would be more individual, per the needs, and realize that that it needs to be more individual.
It's
So
just
what?
tailored to that individual's situation.
Okay.
Which is a lot. That's a lot to ask. I mean, there's a lot of service members that are transitioning every day, and it's probably unrealistic to think there's going to be somebody there to hold your hand and learn all about you and all. I get that, but I just think broad answers don't help the individual that might be in a unique situation or have a certain need, or what was their background. I mean, I came from a very kind of rough upbringing. um, I wasn't anxious to go back to that. So when I got medically retired, I wanted to find my transition into a different area, into a different geographical spot if I could, and to a different footing than what I had come to the Marine Corps from. So it's it's a layered. There's no easy answer to that. I just think I would like to see something in place that's more accessible to each and every veteran, that allows them to talk through it. Being told resources is one thing, and that's all well and good. But when you're getting out of the military, you're so focused sometimes on what's next and getting ahead and prepared for that, you're not so eager to tie up like loose ends with your military career. Well, a lot of that could be networking. It could be what DAV does best with benefits help. And that gives you financial stability, hopefully, even if it's for the short term where you're figuring out what is next professionally. So there's a lot that goes into it. And there's a lot of things I think that could improve the process. But at the end of the day, each veteran also needs to own it, and take charge as much as they can with their own transition.
Do you think this is a place where, either military service organizations or veteran service organizations could partner for the benefit of, the service member?
Oh, I think it's certainly, I mean, it's always out there. I think there's always a possibility. It looks like you had another question.
Well, I was thinking, like, you know, do you feel a 22-year-old would be open to, um, honest, transparent conversations about where they were? And also, do you think it would be, and I apologize for not giving you a chance to answer your question, um,
No,
but it not being connected to their transition out of the military, it could actually be better from a service organization because maybe they would be more transparent.
yeah, I mean, I think we all grow up at different rates. We all come to terms with where we're at in life and what we want and what we experience at different rates of speed and for different reasons. I mean, it was probably, for me personally, I thought my transition was going to be easy. I'll be honest. I was 26 when I joined the Marine Corps. I had been pursuing a minor league baseball career. I had other aspirations. I wasn't good enough. I got cut. Like, baseball players and scouts don't like 200 hitters. So, I mean, I always had an interest to join the Marine Corps, but I also knew a lot about who I was as a man when I joined. I had my own place, so I was paying my own bills. This was a way for me to just further my skill sets and gain skill sets. So I think it's different for everybody, but I thought it would be easy because I was older when I joined and I had all these life experiences. And I was surprised at how quickly I identified as a Marine. I was in from the time I was 26, about 34. A little later in life, as I said, and I thought I would just slip right back in, right? I'll get a career, I'll get a job, and things will kind of in a different way, but yet continue where they were. And professionally, maybe, but mentally, it was definitely an adjustment. I felt like I didn't understand my purpose all the time anymore. I felt like I was trying to find that purpose and also the significance and the weight. When you're in the military, I mean, it never felt like a job. I never clocked in, I never clocked out. The passion and the desire and the importance of the mission could carry you through the roughest times because you're so distracted, if you will, mentally by all the other things you need to do. Um, the true impact of that experience might not hit you till months later. So it's a really good and tough question to where maybe they'd be more transparent, but they have to come to terms as well with whatever they experience and come to a realization that that doesn't define them and it's a part of their life, but it's up to them to kind of shape that and take from that experience what they want. And some are ready to talk about it right away. I've always been kind of an open book. Some aren't. And sometimes that's more influential than even personal. It's what you're around and what your immediate surroundings are telling you, or what they're how are they interacting with you? Are they making you feel comfortable and like you can talk about things, or is it an environment where you feel like you don't relate and don't want to open up? But if there's any veteran out there that is not sure, I would always suggest opening up and talking to somebody. It's usually more beneficial than not.
So then, it always asks the question, what do you do today that you take from your military experience? So, like,
Oh,
learned it or
well, it's a
just
lot. I'm assistant communications director at DAV. So a lot of my combat experience, quite frankly, helps me when whether it's interviewing a veteran for a story. And, we help veterans of all generations, of all eras. So I'm talking to Vietnam vets, still even some World War II ones, Korea even. So it's a unique position that I'm thankful to be in. But my direct combat experience, I think, helps them feel comfortable. Now that's obviously an experience, not necessarily a skill set that I learned. Although the Marine Corps does train you on how to defend yourself. I think it all does. I mean, my college degree is my military service for what I do now. So everything that I did in the Marine Corps has come into play with what I do now in some way, shape, or form. Now, I've learned as much at DAV with the different aspects of transitions as I ever did beforehand, because I see it on the daily basis. Um, so there's a lot. I would say almost everything. There's really almost nothing that hasn't carried over actually.
okay. Um, Let me think. So, my favorite question to ask is, do you do any volunteer work now?
I do. I not as much as I would like, but I actually got introduced to the place. I've done some volunteer work through DAV, believe it or not, and it's called Camp Corral, and it's a camp that Golden Corral actually started. DAV is a main sponsor of it, but it's gone on. I think 2011 it started, and it's a summer camp that's specifically for the children of wounded, ill, or injured, or even killed in action military veterans. So it's these kids that have all these unique experiences as far as moving, as far as maybe losing a parent or having a parent with certain disabilities that makes their relationship tricky, or different than other kids. So it's a unique blend of the military community along with their children and their families kind of all coming together at camps throughout the country. Like there's 21 different states I believe they're in. Roughly, I don't want to get quoted on this, but I think 600 kids, maybe more a year, are attending, and I've done some volunteer work with them, and it's really nice to see those kids just get a chance to be innocent and not necessarily feel like they need to keep under wraps their experiences with moving or having their parents deployed or having a parent that needs help with certain things based on a disability, and they talk about it openly. Like when you talk about the young kid that's transitioning maybe at a veteran service organization, they're from more at home to talk. Well, I think that's the same thing at these camps with those kids. They feel an ease and a comfort in that environment that allows them to open up. And I mean, I've been lucky enough to interview just for my own interest a few of those kids, not for publication or anything, and you can tell they love it. You can see it in their eyes; they light up. It's something to behold. But I'm very pleased to do some of that, and I would like to do more. And unfortunately, with COVID, there was none last year, so they're just getting back up and running. So I'll try to get back involved.
Very good. I will share with the community because Brian already knows this, that I'm actually at a retreat, and so the Wi-Fi and the quality of the video is a little bit suspect, and it's definitely on my side. So
Yeah,
what?
as long as she takes the blame.
Yes. So I would like to encourage Bryan to come back at another time when we're just a little bit more shipshape. Um,
All
but
you
I
gotta do
think,
is ask me.
yep, and we will. And so, so I appreciate anybody who's sticking with us through a little bit of the feedback and different things like that. I would also, uh, my next question for you, Bryan, you said you have a family now. Tell us about your family.
Yeah. Man, it's something else. So I got retired 2015. It was April 29th. Uh, Met my wife shortly thereafter. It was online, but she poked me. She's gonna kill me when she hears it. But went out, had dinner, and I knew right away, like, she's the one. Um, and I didn't date much in the Marine Corps. I didn't. I wasn't that guy. I was focused on things I needed to do, and I tend to like women that are career driven, and the military can be tough on them because you're asking them to forfeit a lot of different things, and it just wasn't of interest. But I met her, and I knew right away. We got married March 11th, 2017. Had our first son September 29th, 2018, and then a beautiful young daughter on November 25th of 2020. So she's just now starting to maybe hint towards crawling and causing some problems where her and her brother can interact, but they're phenomenal. They're healthy. We couldn't be happier about it. Now, raising them during the last year and the obstacles that COVID created was a challenge, but it was a good one. And I think we probably grew quicker as parents than we expected in such a short amount of time with some of those obstacles and learning to deal with it all in a house and make it all work. And I couldn't say enough good things about my wife and what she deals with and taking care of the kids while I'm now back at work full time, no longer working at home. And she's the champion of the household. There's no doubt.
Very good. So if you so you've really enjoyed working at DAV.
Hmm.
Um, let me think of any stories you feel at like, and you had said it sort of like your deployments you feel really helped you in your job at DAV. But is there any influences or people who inspired you while you served that you utilize now?
Um, well, on a sad note, there actually was a guy, Vietnam vet, that I met right out of the gates at DAV. So this wasn't exactly during my active duty time. He was a Vietnam vet that lost 3 of his limbs when he stepped on a landmine in 1968 or 9. Jim Sursley, and he's from Minnesota. I learned so much from him about DAV as an organization, but most importantly, just the veteran community. And unfortunately, he passed away Sunday before Memorial Day. His visitations are going on right now in Florida. His funeral is tomorrow. I kind of wanted to be there, but truth be told, my own father is currently in hospice, and I didn't want to be too far away in case something happened there. But not just because what's going on with him, but the impact he had on me. I traveled with him my first 3 years at DAV. I've been there almost 6 now, and just was a sponge around him. This is a guy that walked into a room and owned it. Charismatic as long as the day is long, and just he, people revered him. He was one of those guys that when you met him, you wanted to get to know him, and you wanted to spend time with him, and you wanted to hear his opinion on things. And unfortunately, we lost him at 73, but he's one of the first people that come to mind as far as influencing me. But there's a lot of Marines that did. Really, everybody I tried to take something from. Um, and try to use that to improve myself. And there was another Marine that, well, in some way, I mean, Denny inspires me when I see what he's doing now. And what I love about him is the whole be yourself thing. I think a lot of people can struggle with that. Everybody wants to conform or fit into what they think somebody else expects of them. And anytime I run across somebody that kind of throws caution to the wind on that front, I have instant respect for. So so many. Cersei is the one I think of. Um, but it's a long list. I mean, Jeremy Vaught, Todd Hunter, who I work with now. And see, my deployment was so unique because I was an individual augment. So although I met a lot of people there, I wasn't with them but for a couple of days. So I probably forget names and faces as far as different experiences, but I'll never forget June 19th, which ironically is my wife's birthday, when I got into my hand-to-hand situation. And we were clearing houses, and I was the first one in, and I got butt stroked. Long story short, I kind of bear hugged the guy, bought my time. The rest of the fire team went in, cleared the rest of the house. And obviously, I'm here today, and I won that little standoff as far as just pushing him off of me. I figured he was out of ammo. If he wasn't, I don't get the butt end, I get the other end. So I actually pushed him off of me long enough to drop my rifle in hopes he would turn away from me to go get it. And he did. So I took my 9mm and into the situation, but he did rupture 3 discs in my neck that led to my surgery and my retirement. But there's a Marine that came up to me after that, and I honestly, I don't even remember his name. I think it was Thomas. But what he said to me is, no matter what anybody says to you, what happened today, you did yourself, and you got through that situation on your own. And that just, it sticks with me to this day. I don't know where he's at. I don't think I've ever ran into him after this. But that just stuck with me as because it made me not feel guilty. And if people that know me, I had kind of as much as a physical injury from that, it was kind of a moral one. Being in foreign land in somebody else's home and being in a physical conflict like that, it could take you mentally all over the place in a lot of different ways. But he almost instantly, I think, recognized that and tempered some of those immediate emotions and adrenaline that goes with a situation like that. So I'll never forget that. I honestly, I think his last name was Sergeant Thomas, or well, rank and then name, but yeah, that sticks out a lot. But you're asking questions that I could give a long answer to that.
That's all right. That's all right. I think so the leadership conference that I'm at is the Travis Manion Foundation,
Yeah.
and so their motto is "If not me, then who?" and character does matter. And so basically, in my mind, what you described from your other Marine is kindness,
Yeah.
because he showed you a kindness that you remember to this day, and it builds character because it built your resiliency, and resiliency is within relationships. And so all
Yeah.
of that matters. And your story and sharing your story with other people who also might um, struggle with their own moral dilemmas for different things that we do in the military, um, that oftentimes some civilians do, but a lot of civilians don't have to struggle with.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's so simple things like kindness
Well,
that,
yeah.
or humor, that people just don't realize are quite as impactful, but they're incredibly impactful.
Oh, yeah. Especially in a moment like that. I mean, that guy was perceptive. I mean, he knew in the moment what I took years to probably come to terms with. And I think he might have also seen the look on my face because if you're in the Marine Corps, you know how they train your fire teams. Like I'm sitting there in a bear hug with this guy, and I'm watching him run by me like this isn't even happening. So I think he probably saw the look on my face, like, "Do you guys not see this?" But it's not how we're trained. They got to make sure the rest of the house is clear, and so be the case. But yeah, kindness and a sense of understanding went a long way for me at that moment. Um, you know, I don't think anybody wakes up and thinking, "Oh, I'm going to potentially take a life today." So when you find yourself just like that in a situation, and somebody is aware enough and perceptive enough to put themselves in somebody else's shoes, it was kindness, it was understanding, it was empathetic, it was really everything I could have asked for in the moment.
Yeah. So, and I think it's so important to tell your stories because it sounds weird because it's your stories, but it's not about you, because your stories allow other people to connect with you, but also just to connect sometimes.
No, you're yeah, exactly right. I mean, when I talked about it initially, there were some selfish components for me to get it out of my head. But as time goes by, yeah, it's about the people that hopefully hear it and realize maybe whatever they experience, and it could be vastly different. But the emotions are often the same. Doubt, did I do the right thing? Should I have been there? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? What could I have done? So oftentimes the peripherals of those type of situations, although the situation itself may be very different, the concepts in your head that you're, flipping through and trying to come to terms with are very similar. And that's where I have no issues. And I will always tell my story if it's going to help somebody. And if it doesn't, hey, I tried. But you have to own your experiences, I think. Running from them gets you nowhere. Misinterpreting them might get you somewhere, but it ain't going to get you to the finish line. So being honest with yourself, self-evaluating, and understanding not only your strengths, but your weaknesses and where your emotions are coming from, I think are critical to figuring out your next steps and what your path may be, and what you may need to work on, or what you may need to address, or where maybe you don't need to spend as much time because you do have a better handle on it. So it's important in so many ways, not just helping people, but it's also helping me self-evaluate each and every day, month, year, especially with the family and the kids that we talked about. As they get older, I don't want them to, I guess I'm not sure how I want to say it. I don't want them to wonder what's wrong with dad. Dad wants to have it figured out as much and as healthily as I can. So every day is a matter of improving, whether it's a deployment issue or just me as a professional at what I do for a living.
Okay. So I just channeled my inner Ed, and I remembered one of the questions he always actually begins with.
I'm trying to talk a lot to let you do that.
Okay, yeah. So Edward asked, why the Marines?
That's a good question. I have an answer for that one. My grandfathers both served during World War II. My dad did, I think, 17 days in the Air Force and got discharged for allergies. And basically, it was a shock to my family. My grandparents had passed when I was young, so although they served, it wasn't a family conversation we were having. And I was 26 years old. People don't think the 26-year-old's about to go join the Marine Corps. But I was running out of options. Baseball ended and I needed to do something, and we don't need to get into my youth, but it wasn't in Columbus, Ohio for me at that point. So if I decided if I was going to do it, we've been in war at the time already for 5 or 6 years. So if I'm going to do it, I want the best to my right, left, and all that. The same thing you hear from a lot of Marines. I wanted to have the hardest training, not just because I knew the ones with me would have it, but I would have it. So I had no reason not to. It's like if I was going to play baseball, my goal was the major leagues, not the minors that I topped out at, but that's how I saw it, and that's how I was introduced to the Marine Corps. Other people probably joined other services for the same reason and then became Army Rangers or Navy SEALs, which, as much as I love being a Marine, I'm not going to say I can do what they can do. So we all have those individual reasons, but for me, it was that simple. If I'm going to do this, I'm probably going to combat. If I'm going to combat, I want to be as ready as I think I can be. It was just that linear of a thought process.
Very good. I appreciate might think that. And
you cut out.
I said I appreciate that you said all the services might think that.
Yeah.
Why a person would make the choices that they were. That to me is a compassionate response, because it's my husband was Marine Corps first, and now he's an Air Force reservist. And
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, and so he really has enjoyed the switch, but it is so innately different, or culturally different, and good and bad on both sides.
Yeah.
Things that he holds on to the Marine Corps, and then things that he's super glad that he doesn't have to deal with anymore, being in the Air Force. So I can appreciate that. But
well, I'm glad you picked up on that, because I might be a Marine, but I don't pretend, that we could do what we could do without all the other services. That's why even my answer, although I knew it, I felt jaded even saying it, because your perception changes. That's why I joined, which was a long time ago.
All right. Well, is there listeners?
You cut out on me again, the audio.
Yeah, and I apologize once for the 100th time about our audio. Is there any other thing that you want to share with our audience, that to get them to know Bryan, to reach out to DAB? Like, what's your big thing that you like to share?
Well, if you are out there near a veteran, and whether it's claims help, employment, just looking to maybe go to meetings and meet other veterans, I would definitely suggest you check out DAV.org. We have a gauntlet worth of services that can help you in many different ways, including our volunteer network, transportation network. We take 600,000 veterans a year to their VA appointments to and from at no cost. Um, and if you are out there, you don't have to be a member of DAV. We do have over 1 million members worldwide, but you do not have to be a member to access our services, talk to a national service officer. You can go to benefitsquestions.org, and that's where you can reach out to your local service officer if you want to do claims, appeals, whatever it may be. But the one thing I will say to any veteran out there that is having an issue, talk about it, please. No matter how uncomfortable it may make you, I think you will exhale at the end of it and feel better. It might not give you an instant solution to whatever is bothering you, but it's going to release some of that pent up energy and that stress and angst and whatever you may be feeling. But reach out to somebody, whether that's the VA's crisis line, whether that's emailing DAV, whatever it is, have an outlet of some shape and form that allows you to empower yourself. Don't be silent about it. And everybody's story is different. It could be so many different things. So that's why I encourage you to talk about it. There's probably solutions and programs out there and services that are just the perfect fit for you, that you're unaware of until you talk about it. Don't assume somebody knows what you're going through or what your struggle is. Let them know, and I think you'd be surprised at how willing they are and sometimes able to help you directly.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to end the podcast now. I want to thank everybody for listening to Helping the Brave. And if you like it on YouTube, please hit subscribe. None of the other shows sound this bad. So,
I can attest to that.
yes, and I can, and Bryan will be on again. You heard it here. He said he would. So we can do this again. But I just want to thank everybody for sticking with us, and thank you so much, Bryan, for coming on and sharing your story. It's impactful, and I appreciate that. We're going to end because I'm on my cell phone. I don't know if that will kick you out of the room or not, but I'm going to hit the end button. So stick
I'll
with
figure it
me
out.
if it does, and we'll see where it goes.
All right. Thank you, Amy.